Hello. Trudeau is threatening to take money from bank accounts, and he's freezing money in bank accounts or something. It's very difficult to know what's going on because the situation changes so quickly and so completely. But I was reminded of another instance which was used by another similarly despotic government, a despotic government masquerading as a democracy, and that was in the famous Count Dankula case. I keep talking about it because I found the whole situation very disturbing. You may remember that the principal mover in this was a chap called Mark Meechan, otherwise known as Count Dankula, and he was prosecuted by a Scottish police force that had nothing better to do than go after people who made jokes. When Meechan was found guilty, finally, he was fined £800, and he vowed to go to jail rather than pay the fine. Next thing you know, the Scottish government had removed £800 from his bank account under what's called an arrestment of funds order. That is, they arrested his money. Fortunately, Meechan had more money because contributions to his fighting fund were pouring in. But a situation of that sort could actually render a victim homeless if carried to enough of an extent. And a tyrannical government which regards the citizen as the property of the state wouldn't have any trouble in extending that property idea to all the victims' possessions as well. So everything you have, money, possessions, even children in the end, are yours only as long as the state is pleased to allow it. I don't know how many countries actually have arrestment of funds orders. When I checked online, I found the only references were to Scotland, and Trudeau is using a similar action, but it's not called arrestment of funds. It's there's something to do with rules that govern national emergencies. As a matter of fact, I have some friends in Canada, and I emailed them and asked if they could explain what Trudeau actually thought he was accomplishing. But none of them have written back, and maybe they're afraid to commit themselves to email, which is possibly a bad sign. Look, I can see how such an idea could start to creep in. For instance, let's get back to children. How about laws for the protection of children? Who could possibly argue the case that an abused child shouldn't be taken out of the hands of a violent parent by the state? You see how it goes. Unfortunately, though, once you've started on that, the precedent is set, and unless there are some very robust checks and balances in place, it can only get worse. And it's the checks and balances that are singularly failing in our modern case right now. So let's just think, children in violent households, well, we've got to get them out. How about a bank account owned by someone convicted of drug dealing? Well, I know that the British government does take money from such accounts, and everybody agrees that's money earned by someone who has destroyed lives and created widespread misery. So the state should dip into his account and take those ill-gotten gains away, shouldn't they? Well, yeah, there's a good argument for that. How about someone who gets drunk and smashes his car into the breadwinner of a family, killing him? We can take money out of the drunk driver's account every week to support his grieving widow and his 10 innocent children. How about someone who smokes gets lung cancer and then becomes a burden on the National Health Service with all sorts of operations and medical equipment. Okay, perhaps you think I'm going too far with this. Well, no. However ill-gotten those gains, however nasty the person, however they got the money, it's their money. And no one should be able to tell a bank to turn it over. I'm not talking about someone suing for a debt, by the way. If they can prove that the money in the bank actually belongs to them, then there's a good case for the bank to turn the money over, because the bank would therefore be holding stolen goods, wouldn't it? But as for the state stepping in and sequestering it as a form of punishment, if that's the way a state behaves, any sort of trust in the banking system will crumble. Because how do we know when next the state will decide that the best way of punishing us is to render us penniless? And our civilization absolutely depends on our trust in the banks. So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I don't trust banks anyway. Yeah, you may not trust the general idea of the businesses. You may not trust the people who work there, but we still trust the principle of the bank, don't we? Whatever. Most of us have or have had mortgages, for instance. Many of us have taken loans. Most of us have at least holiday money stored in the bank. So we're used to the idea that money is relatively safe there. But I started to get really worried with that Meacham case. Not so much because the authoritarian Scottish government was dipping into the pot, nor that the obviously corrupted judiciary were colluding. No, it was because the media, that's the checks and balances I was talking about just before. The media, not just the broadcast media, but the newspapers, and not just in Scotland, but up and down the United Kingdom, they were all agreeing Meacham was a Nazi and deserved all that he was getting, including state theft. I don't remember anyone off the beaten track, media-wise, talking about the terrible precedent set by stealing money from the bank account of a private citizen. Fair enough if they were idiot enough to convict him, but if he chose to go to jail, then that was his prerogative. And the same thing's happening in Canada right now. The Canadian government is quite literally starving its peasants to bring them into line. And, I believe, talking about starving those who might wish to help out as well. And the media are going right along with them. And this is what I can't understand. This terrifyingly unified chorus in lockstep, well, there is a chorus in lockstep, in harmony with the government. What has happened to our newspapers? Why are the consequences of political actions being discussed only on platforms like this one? And it won't stop with the truckers, of course. Once it's been established, any strike, any complaint, any reaction, and the banks will be the first port of call. Why aren't the banks kicking up a fuss? They are supposed to be completely separate from government. Does anyone remember a truly heartbreaking Rod Steiger film called Across the Bridge? It gets me every time I think about it. Well, that was supposed to be his utterly tragic state at the end of that film. That was a situation that had been engineered by corrupt, brutal Mexican police and town officials. Oh, that could never happen in a civilized place like Canada, could it? And talking about the collusion of the government and the banks and the media all together in the bringing to heel of the ordinary people. I've been Grannyopteryx. I am on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I also have Twitter, Gab and Parler accounts as Grannyopteryx. So you can get a notification of my videos through Twitter, Gab or Parler if you're not getting them through the platform you're using. And please support my channel. And that would include money, but liking and sharing also is a very good way of supporting my channel. And till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Grannyopteryx design or Granbow with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.grannyopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.